You think honesty is power. You believe vulnerability is strength. They told you that hiding nothing means fearing nothing, but you've been lied to, because every detail you reveal is a weapon others can turn against you. Machiavelli knew this before Instagram, before job interviews, before "let's be real." He saw straight through the self-help gospel. Show too much, and you invite manipulation, sabotage, even ruin. The modern world has sold you a dangerous myth, that transparency equals trustworthiness, that vulnerability builds authentic connections, that sharing your struggles makes you relatable and powerful. This narrative has created a generation of people who broadcast their weaknesses, advertise their limitations, and wonder why they consistently find themselves outmaneuvered, overlooked, and exploited. Today, you'll learn the brutal opposite of modern advice. You'll discover why the most respected leaders in history, the ones who survived betrayal and chaos, the ones who built lasting power structures, all followed one fundamental law: conceal more than you reveal. This isn't about becoming deceptive or manipulative. It's about understanding that information is currency, and you've been giving yours away for free. By the end of this, you'll understand the 3 critical pieces of information the world must never know about you. You'll learn why revealing even one of these can cost you your freedom to maneuver, your competitive advantage, and ultimately your power to shape your own destiny. More importantly, you'll discover how strategic concealment doesn't isolate you from meaningful relationships. It creates the space necessary for genuine respect and lasting influence. The stakes couldn't be higher. In a world where everyone is competing for the same opportunities, the same resources, the same positions of influence, the person who maintains strategic mystery holds every advantage. While others exhaust themselves in performative authenticity, you will learn to cultivate the kind of presence that commands attention, respect, and genuine curiosity. Your secrets aren't buried. They're broadcast the moment you open your mouth and trust too quickly. This isn't hyperbole. It's mathematical reality. Every piece of personal information you share multiplies your vulnerability exponentially. One person tells another, who tells another, and within weeks, your private struggles, your ambitious plans, your deepest fears are common knowledge among people who have no investment in your success. Machiavelli wasn't interested in the romance of authenticity because he understood human nature at its core. He wrote, "He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who allows himself to be deceived." But the deeper truth is this: most people don't need to actively seek to deceive you. You deceive yourself by believing that others share your interest in your well-being. The strongest individuals throughout history have been cautious with their information because they understood that lasting power is built not just on achievements, but on what you strategically refuse to disclose. The first pillar of strategic concealment: never reveal your true ambitions. You think being open about your goals makes you memorable, magnetic, someone others want to support and collaborate with. The reality is precisely the opposite. Every person you inform about your genuine objectives becomes a potential obstacle, competitor, or saboteur. This isn't because people are inherently malicious. It's because everyone is playing their own game, protecting their own interests, and advancing their own agenda. When you announce that you're planning to launch a business in a specific industry, you've just informed every competitor in your network. When you share that you're pursuing a particular position or opportunity, you've alerted others who might want the same thing. When you reveal your timeline, your strategy, your resources, you've handed over intelligence that can be used to outmaneuver you at every turn. Consider the psychology of goal sharing. Research shows that people who talk about their goals extensively are actually less likely to achieve them. This happens because the act of sharing creates a psychological satisfaction that substitutes for actual progress. But beyond this, sharing your ambitions creates external resistance. People unconsciously begin to position themselves relative to your declared intentions. Some will compete directly, others will subtly undermine. And even well-meaning individuals might offer advice that serves their interests rather than yours. No successful leader in history advertised their strategic moves in advance. Military commanders don't announce their battle plans. Chess masters don't declare their next 3 moves. Business leaders don't reveal their acquisition targets. Power grows in silence. The quieter your intentions, the fewer your obstacles, the less resistance you face. The more surprises you can deliver when you're ready to act. The second pillar: never reveal your deepest insecurity. The contemporary culture of vulnerability has convinced people that sharing their wounds creates connection and understanding. While this might work in therapeutic settings with trained professionals, it becomes a liability in competitive environments, which includes virtually every area of life where success matters. You want to be authentic, so you share the childhood trauma that still affects your confidence. You want to be relatable, so you discuss your struggles with self-doubt. You want to build trust, so you confess the areas where you feel inadequate. What you're actually doing is providing a roadmap for anyone who wants to manipulate, undermine, or control you. Machiavelli observed, "Men offend either from fear or hatred." When people sense what truly hurts you, what genuinely threatens your emotional stability, they file that information away. In moments of conflict, competition, or even casual social dynamics, they'll instinctively press on those pressure points. This isn't necessarily conscious cruelty. It's human nature to seek advantage wherever possible. Your insecurities are like open wounds. Revealing them doesn't make you strong or relatable, it makes you a target. The colleague who knows you struggle with imposter syndrome will subtly question your qualifications in meetings. The friend who understands your fear of abandonment will use that knowledge to manipulate your behavior in relationships. The competitor who recognizes your need for approval will exploit that need to make you act against your own interests. This doesn't mean you should never address your insecurities or work on personal growth. It means you should do this work privately, with carefully chosen mentors or professionals, not as part of casual conversation or social bonding. Your pain should function as armor that makes you stronger, not as a confession that makes you vulnerable. The third pillar: never reveal your true limits, what you cannot do. Modern culture celebrates self-deprecation and humility, convincing people that admitting limitations makes them authentic and trustworthy. In reality, broadcasting your incapabilities is a strategic disaster that undermines your positioning in every competitive situation. The world doesn't reward self-deprecation, it punishes it mercilessly. When you openly discuss what you cannot do, what skills you lack, what knowledge gaps you haven't filled, you're providing competitors with intelligence they can use to position themselves as superior alternatives. Even loyalty is transactional in professional and social contexts. Once you say, "I can't," "I don't know how," or "I'm not good enough," you broadcast blind spots that others will exploit. This creates a cascade of negative consequences. Opportunists will maneuver around your admitted weaknesses. Rivals will highlight their strengths in areas where you've confessed limitations. Even allies will hedge their bets, reducing their investment in your success because you've signaled that you might not deliver. Power in any context, professional, social, romantic, is maintained by the perception of capability, even when you're still learning, even when you're improvising, even when you're uncertain. This doesn't mean being dishonest about your qualifications or making promises you cannot keep. It means maintaining strategic ambiguity about your limitations while you work privately to address them. The most successful people throughout history have been masters of this principle. They never advertised their learning curve. They didn't announce their experiments. They didn't confess their uncertainties. Instead, they created the impression of competence while quietly developing actual competence behind the scenes. But won't this make me cold? Won't this kill intimacy? Won't people see through this and lose trust? These are the questions that weak minds ask when confronted with strategic thinking. The strong understand something deeper. Relationships built on reckless honesty usually end with betrayal, disappointment, or manipulation, not deep connection and mutual respect. Machiavelli's world wasn't a romantic comedy where vulnerability automatically creates meaningful bonds. It was a chessboard where information equals power, where every revelation changes the game dynamics, where survival depends on maintaining strategic advantages. The same principles apply today, though the stakes might seem less dramatic. Consider the psychology of revelation versus concealment in building respect and influence. When you immediately share your struggles, your plans, your limitations. You satisfy others. Curiosity without creating genuine interest. Curiosity satisfied becomes boredom. Mystery maintained becomes fascination. The most compelling people throughout history have been those who revealed themselves gradually, strategically, selectively. They understood that relationships deepen through earned trust, not immediate emotional exposure. True intimacy develops when someone demonstrates their worthiness to receive privileged information, not when that information is freely distributed to anyone willing to listen. Strategic concealment creates several powerful psychological dynamics that work in your favor. First, it establishes your discernment. When people realize that you don't share everything with everyone, they understand that access to your inner world is valuable and must be earned. This immediately elevates your status in their perception. Second, it creates the halo effect. What you hide becomes the source of speculation, intrigue, and ultimately respect. People naturally assume that someone who maintains privacy must have something worth hiding, something valuable, something significant. This assumption works in your favor, even when the reality is mundane. Third, it forces others to invest more effort in understanding you. When information isn't freely available, people work harder to obtain it. This investment creates psychological ownership. They value what they had to work for more than what was freely given. The relationship becomes more meaningful to them precisely because access feels exclusive. The deepening understanding reveals that hiding these three critical elements, your true ambitions, your deepest insecurities, your actual limitations, doesn't make you deceptive or manipulative. It makes you impenetrable to casual exploitation while creating space for genuine relationships to develop with people who prove themselves worthy of deeper trust. This strategic approach provides multiple layers of protection and advantage. It gives you space to pursue goals without interference or competition. It allows room for personal growth and error correction without public judgment or exploitation. It provides freedom to change direction, adapt strategy, or pivot approaches without having to explain or justify decisions to people who have no stake in your success. Historical analysis supports this approach consistently. Every leader who fell prematurely started by trusting the wrong person with the wrong information. Every public figure brought down by scandal first made the mistake of believing that sharing means strength and authenticity builds loyalty. Caesar's assassination began with trusted senators who knew his plans. Modern political careers end when private conversations become public knowledge. Business empires collapse when strategic information reaches competitors. The pattern is invariant. Those who control information control outcomes. Those who freely distribute information about themselves become controlled by others who use that information strategically. Yet this doesn't mean becoming closed off or antisocial. The most successful practitioners of strategic concealment are often the most socially skilled individuals. They understand how to be genuinely interested in others, how to build rapport through listening rather than sharing, how to create connection through asking insightful questions rather than answering every question asked of them. This approach actually enhances rather than diminishes your ability to build meaningful relationships. When you're not focused on performing vulnerability or demonstrating authenticity, you can focus on understanding others more deeply. When you're not constantly sharing your own struggles, you can provide better support for others' challenges. When you're not advertising your limitations, you can concentrate on developing actual competence. The strategic concealment of these three elements creates a foundation of strength from which genuine intimacy can eventually develop with carefully selected individuals who prove their loyalty, discretion, and mutual investment over time. The difference is that this intimacy develops from a position of strength rather than vulnerability, making it more stable and less susceptible to exploitation. Understanding the principles intellectually is merely the beginning. True mastery requires systematic integration of strategic concealment into daily interactions, professional relationships, and social dynamics. This integration must be subtle enough to avoid seeming evasive or suspicious, while being comprehensive enough to protect your strategic interests. The implementation begins with developing what intelligence professionals call conversation hygiene, the systematic practice of filtering information before it leaves your mouth. Before any conversation, especially with unfamiliar people or in professional contexts, mentally rehearse restraint rather than revelation. When tempted to announce a significant goal or ambition, pause and ask yourself a series of strategic questions. Who specifically benefits if I share this information? What competitive advantage am I surrendering? How might this knowledge be used against me if circumstances change? Who else might learn about this through the person I'm telling? What do I gain from sharing that I couldn't achieve through other means? Most of the time, honest analysis reveals that sharing your ambitions provides no tangible benefit while creating numerous potential disadvantages. The satisfaction of talking about your plans is a poor substitute for the satisfaction of achieving them without interference. When you feel compelled to confess an insecurity or vulnerability, apply even more rigorous analysis. Is this person genuinely invested in my growth and success? Or are they primarily curious about my weaknesses? Have they demonstrated discretion with sensitive information from others? Do they have competing interests that might make my vulnerability useful to them? Is sharing this weakness likely to create genuine understanding and support, or merely satisfy their need for gossip or sense of superiority? The most effective practitioners develop what might be called productive opacity, the ability to redirect conversations away from personal revelations toward more strategic exchanges. Instead of sharing your insecurities, become genuinely curious about solving problems related to your growth areas. Instead of confessing limitations, ask questions that help you develop competence in those areas without advertising the gaps. When facing questions about your capabilities or plans, master the art of strategic ambiguity. I'm exploring several interesting opportunities, conveys engagement without specificity. I'm always working on improving different aspects of my approach, acknowledges growth without confessing limitations. That's an interesting possibility I'm considering. Maintains options without commitment. This isn't deception, it's discretion. You're not lying about your situation. You're simply choosing not to provide detailed intelligence about your position to people who haven't earned that level of access to your strategic thinking. The practice extends to digital communications and social media presence. Every post, every comment, every shared article becomes part of your information profile. The strategic practitioner considers what each piece of shared content reveals about their ambitions, insecurities, and limitations. They curate their digital presence to support their objectives, rather than simply expressing every thought or feeling. Develop the discipline of strategic delay in communications. The immediate impulse to respond, to share, to reveal, often stems from emotional rather than strategic thinking. Creating systematic delays, waiting hours before responding to messages, thinking overnight before sharing significant news, discussing important decisions with trusted advisors before broadcasting them, allows rational analysis to override emotional impulses. Learn to recognize and interrupt your own patterns of oversharing. Most people have specific triggers that cause them to reveal more than intended. Alcohol, emotional stress, excitement about new opportunities, desire for validation, competitive social situations. Identifying these triggers allows you to develop countermeasures that maintain your strategic position, even when your emotional state might otherwise compromise your discretion. The integration process also involves developing alternative sources of satisfaction for the needs that oversharing typically meets. If you tend to share ambitions because you enjoy the excitement and validation of others' reactions, find other ways to celebrate your goals privately or with carefully selected confidants. If you confess insecurities, seeking reassurance, build that confidence through private development work rather than public vulnerability. Practice the art of deflection and redirection. When others ask direct questions about your plans, your struggles, or your limitations, learn to acknowledge their interest while steering conversations toward safer territory. That's thoughtful of you to ask. What made you curious about that? Turns the focus back on them. I appreciate your interest. I'm still thinking through various aspects of that situation. Provides acknowledgement without information. Master the strategic use of partial disclosure. Sometimes sharing carefully selected, relatively innocuous information satisfies others. Curiosity while protecting more sensitive intelligence. You might discuss general industry trends while keeping specific business plans private. You might acknowledge that you're working on personal development without detailing specific insecurities. You might confirm that you're exploring new opportunities without revealing your actual target positions. The highest level of strategic concealment transcends mere information protection to become a comprehensive approach to building influence, commanding respect, and maintaining operational freedom in complex social and professional environments. At this advanced level, concealment becomes a tool for creating the kind of presence that naturally attracts opportunity while repelling exploitation. Advanced practitioners understand that strategic concealment works synergistically with other influence principles. When you control information flow about yourself, you create psychological dynamics that enhance your perceived value, competence, and trustworthiness. People naturally assume that someone who exercises discretion about their own affairs will also be discreet about confidential information shared with them. This reputation for discretion becomes a strategic asset in professional environments. Colleagues, superiors, and clients are more likely to include you in sensitive discussions, strategic planning sessions, and confidential projects when they trust your ability to maintain appropriate boundaries around information. Your concealment of your own strategic intelligence signals your reliability with others. Strategic intelligence. The advanced application involves understanding how strategic concealment interacts with social dynamics to create what might be called gravitational authority. When you consistently maintain appropriate boundaries around personal information while demonstrating genuine interest in others, you create an asymmetrical relationship dynamic where people share more with you than you share with them. This information asymmetry provides multiple advantages. You gain deeper understanding of others, motivations, plans, and vulnerabilities without exposing your own. You become seen as a trusted confidant and advisor rather than a competitor or threat. You develop superior situational awareness that enables better decision-making and strategic positioning. The most sophisticated practitioners learn to use strategic concealment as a leadership tool. Leaders who maintain appropriate mystery about their decision-making processes, their strategic thinking, and their personal challenges create space for others to project competence and confidence onto them. This projection effect multiplies their actual authority and influence. However, this advanced application requires careful calibration. Too much concealment can create suspicion or distance. Too little destroys the strategic advantages. The mastery lies in finding the optimal balance that maintains necessary boundaries while still building genuine relationships and demonstrating authentic leadership. Advanced strategic concealment also involves understanding how to reveal information selectively for maximum impact. Sometimes, strategic disclosure of previously concealed information can be used to reward loyalty, build deeper trust with proven allies, or create specific influence dynamics. The key is that such revelations are conscious choices made for strategic purposes, not emotional impulses or social pressures. The highest practitioners develop what might be called layered disclosure strategies. They maintain different levels of openness with different categories of people based on trust levels, strategic relationships, and potential risks or benefits. Family members might receive more personal information but less professional intelligence. Professional colleagues might learn about work-related challenges but nothing about personal insecurities. Strategic mentors might receive carefully selected information from both domains when it serves specific developmental purposes. This layered approach prevents the common mistake of treating all relationships identically. The person who shares everything with everyone lacks strategic thinking. The person who shares nothing with anyone lacks social skills. The sophisticated practitioner calibrates disclosure based on relationship dynamics, strategic objectives, and risk assessment. The mastery also involves understanding how concealment interacts with other power dynamics, gender, age, cultural background, and professional position all influence how strategic concealment is perceived and how it should be applied. What appears appropriately mysterious in one context might seem evasive in another. What builds respect with certain personality types might create suspicion with others. Advanced practitioners develop sensitivity to these contextual variations while maintaining their core strategic principles. They learn to adjust their communication style, their level of apparent openness, and their information-sharing patterns based on environmental demands without compromising their fundamental strategic position. The ultimate application of strategic concealment involves using it as a foundation for building what Machiavelli would recognize as sustainable power. Influence that doesn't depend on others. Approval, authority that doesn't require constant validation. And strategic freedom that enables long-term thinking and planning. The transformation from transparent vulnerability to strategic concealment represents one of the most sophisticated developments in personal influence and professional effectiveness. This isn't about becoming cold, calculating, or manipulative. It's about understanding that in a world where information is power, those who control their own information control their own destiny. The 3 pillars, concealing your true ambitions, your deepest insecurities, and your actual limitations, form the foundation of what might be called strategic presence. This presence commands attention not through performance or desperate authenticity, but through the natural magnetism of controlled mystery, combined with demonstrated competence. Remember that this approach doesn't isolate you from meaningful relationships or authentic connection. Instead, it creates the conditions necessary for relationships to develop from strength rather than neediness, from choice rather than desperation, from mutual respect rather than shared vulnerability. The person who masters strategic concealment becomes someone others naturally turn to for guidance, partnership, and leadership. They become the calm center around which more emotional, reactive people orbit. They develop the kind of influence that doesn't require constant maintenance or validation because it's built on substance rather than performance. Start implementing these principles immediately, but do so gradually and systematically. Begin by simply pausing before sharing personal information in casual conversations. Notice how much you typically reveal and experiment with revealing less while remaining genuinely engaged with others. Practice the art of asking questions rather than answering them. Become genuinely curious about others, experiences, perspectives, and insights. This shift not only protects your strategic information, but also builds stronger relationships by demonstrating authentic interest in other people. Develop the discipline of private development work. Instead of sharing your struggles and limitations publicly, invest in actually addressing them through books, courses, mentors, and deliberate practice. Let your growth speak through improved results rather than detailed explanations of your development process. Most importantly, remember Machiavelli's fundamental insight. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. You're not seeking to deceive anyone, but you're refusing to be deceived by the modern myth that transparency equals strength, that vulnerability equals authenticity, that sharing everything equals building meaningful relationships. The world is full of people eager to share their plans, their problems, and their limitations with anyone willing to listen. In this environment, the person who maintains strategic discretion while demonstrating genuine capability and authentic interest in others stands out dramatically. Your silence becomes your fortress. Your restraint becomes your strength. Your mystery becomes your magnetism. From this position of strategic concealment, you can choose what to reveal, when to reveal it, and to whom, always on your terms, always for your purposes, always from a position of strength rather than weakness. The choice is yours. Continue broadcasting your vulnerabilities to a world full of competitors and opportunists, or begin building the kind of strategic presence that naturally attracts respect, opportunity, and genuine loyalty from people who prove themselves worthy of your trust over time. Transform your relationship with information, and you transform your relationship with power itself. The rest is just noise.